Yesterday, Bob and I went to the mountains to see the changing colors. And at the hot dog stand in Jefferson, Colorado, there at the beginning of South Park, a young woman noticed my T-shirt from the 2009 Wesley Players production of Thornton Wilder's Our Town. She ran up to me and said, "I played Emily in high school," she beamed. Well, in the play, Emily Webb and George Gibbs grow up together in Grover's Corners. They fall in love and get married. However, when Emily dies, having their first child, she's reluctant to break her ties with the world of the living. And so she is granted one day of return. She chooses to relive her 12th birthday. Emily can see everyone, but they cannot see her, so she wanders about the whole day, cherishing her communitas, the people and places that she loves. And finally, she turns to the stage manager, the only person with whom she can talk, and asks, "Does anyone ever really, truly see life while they're living it?" The stage manager thinks about this a moment and then says, "The saints and the poets, maybe, they do. Some." The practice of paying attention takes time. Most of us move so quickly that our surroundings become no more than the blurry scenery that flies by as we're on the way to someplace else. We pay attention to the speedometer, at least most of us do. Brother. The wristwatch, the cell phone, the list of things that we have to do, all of which give us this illusion that life is manageable. Reverence. Paying attention to life, as Emily discovers, requires a certain pace. It requires a willingness to take detours, even side trips, which are not a part of the original plan. Early in the Bible, there is a story about Moses, who turns out to be God's partner in the liberation of the people Israel. But he was not that yet. He was still a fugitive from justice, hiding out in the Arabian desert to beat a murder rat back in Egypt. Moses' life changed one day when he was tending his father-in-law's sheep. According to the storyteller, he leads his flock beyond the wilderness to the mountain of God, Horeb, where an angel appeared to him in a burning bush. And now the bush was not right in front of him, however. It must have been over a little bit to the side somewhere, because it says that when Moses saw it, he said, "I must turn aside and look at this great sight and see why the bush is not burned up." The bush required Moses to take a time out, at least if he wanted to do more than just glance at it. And he could have done that. He could have just caught this glow of red out of the corner of his eye and said, "Oh, how pretty," and just kept right on driving the sheep. He did not know that it was an angel in the bush, after all. Only the storyteller knew that. Moses could have decided that he would come back tomorrow to see if the bush was still burning when he had a little bit of more time. But he would not have been Moses. He would have just been some guy who got away with murder without ever discovering what else his life might have become. What made Moses Moses was his willingness to turn aside wherever else he was going, whatever else he had to do. He decided it could wait a minute. So he parked the sheep and he left this narrow path to go take a closer look at this marvelous sight. And when he did, the story says God noticed. And God dismissed the angel and took over the bush. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, "Moses, Moses." Oh, Steve, you do that so well. "Moses, Moses." "I'm here," Moses said. And the rest is history. Before God asked Moses to do anything else, however, God asked Moses to take off his shoes. He said, "Come no closer." Not because the warning meant that the ground was hot. The warning meant that the ground was holy. "Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground." Now, for most of us, the problem with paying attention, with reverence, is that at some point in our lives, the world becomes merely to us. Merely. We cease to see the possibilities. We go to school and we are made to color within the lines, and to conjugate verbs and dissect frogs, and calculate sums. And somewhere in the process, we stop expecting burning bushes because life is serious and demanding, and we have to pay attention to our responsibilities, not to the possibility of things. And that would be all right if we weren't missing so much. I have never been presented with a burning bush. But I did see a garden turn golden once, the memory of which haunts me every time I see aspen trees in the fall. I must have been 15, earning some money, keeping the neighbor's cats while she was away. The first time I let myself into the house, the fleas leapt onto my legs like airborne piranha. Now, those of you who have lived in the East understand this. But those of you who have never lived in the East, who have always lived in a high, dry country, cannot appreciate this particular sensation. I attempted to brush them off as I was opening cat food and cleaning litter boxes. And I finally fled out through the back door with a bag of trash that my employer had left for me to carry out to the cans out back. And I could hear the fleas flinging themselves against the plastic so that it sounded as if there was a light rain falling inside the bag. Ugh. I could not wait to get shed of it. That's why I was in a hurry. And on my way to the trash can, I passed this little garden area that was off to the left, not visible from the house. And glancing at it, I got a whole dose of the loveliness all at once. The arch of the trees and the mossy footpath, and a cement bird bath with willowy bushes and a white wrought iron chair, and all of it lit up by these slanting planks of sunlight that turned the whole space golden. It looked like it was a door to another world, and I knew I had to go through it, and I would turn golden as well. But first, I had to ditch that bag. The fleas popped against the plastic as I hurried to the garbage cans near the garage. I stuffed the bag into them and turned around, headed back to the garden, fervent to explore what I had glimpsed in only passing. And when I arrived back at the spot, the light had changed. All that was left was this little overgrown garden spot that no one had sat in for years. The smell of cat litter drifted from the garbage cans. The garden was no longer on fire. Elizabeth Barrett Browning put it like this: earth is crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. But only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest just sit around and pluck blackberries. Ugh. I noticed the flaming gold, but I did not turn aside. I had a bag of fleas to attend to. And while I made that my first priority, the fire moved on in search of someone else who would stop what she was doing, take off her shoes, and say, "Here am I." The practice of paying attention is as simple as looking twice at the people and the things that you would ordinarily pass by, that you could easily ignore. And why would anyone do such things? Well, I can't imagine, unless one is just simply weary of crossing the days off the calendar, because one day seems just like the next. Unless one is weary of acting in what feels like a television commercial instead of your own life. Paying attention offers no quick fix to this weariness. Instead, it is simply one way into a different way of life, one that is willing to pay attention to exactly where we are and who we are with, someone who is willing to walk barefoot on God's holy ground, for those who might crave Communitas. Peter Mayer, in the song that Patrick will sing, reminds us that there is this false worldview that we learn early in life, a split in our thinking, defining what is holy and what is not, which strongly influences what we revere and what we do not, what we pay attention to and what we do not. And so one of the verses in the song begins this way. When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, when Jesus made water wine. And I remember feeling sad that miracles don't happen still. He's describing what some could call the secular, the world without God. But then he continues from a new perspective. But now I can't keep track because everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. He sees the world as sacred, a thin place where that veil between God and people is transparent. Everything is holy now. Deep, meaningful, authentic community is built on the notion that there is no such thing as a sacred and secular divide, because God is dwelling in us and everywhere around us. Deep, meaningful, authentic community is built on the notion that a candle lit in a church building is no more holy or special than the candle that burns on your 2-year-old grandson's birthday cake. Sacred. Deep, meaningful, authentic community blesses all vocations in all places, everywhere. We all carry it, all of us. Patrick will sing, because everything is holy now. There's a fine Southern novelist, Reynold Price, that I really like. He did a translation of the 4 Gospels a few years back, and he calls his book A Palpable God. And I shelve my copy next to my Bibles every time I begin Bible study each year, because we have a God who is pleased to dwell among us, whose holy story just infuses the human story, so that none of us have to leave flesh or blood behind, because we are the temple We are the temple of the living God. Palpable, palpable. God is willing to dwell among us, to meet us where we are, coming to us sometimes in a burning bush, a mighty wind, a pillar of cloud, a descending dove, a newborn baby, a kitchen table, a research team, a launch alliance, a school faculty, a music ensemble. Communitas. What if God is dwelling in us and all around us, in everything and everywhere? What if we had the eyes to see the sacred in the most ordinary places and events?